Let's broaden our understanding of the situation and bring in Dr. H.J. Hellyer, Senior Fellow in Geopolitics at the Royal United Services Institute, joining us live from London. Thank you, as always, Dr. Hellyer, for being with us. Can we start with your take on the current situation? How do you read what's happening next?
Thank you for having me on the program, Owen. Always a great pleasure to be here with you. What's next? We have an out-and-out war underway at present, and we don't see much potential for a de-escalation. Now, I should say this was entirely avoidable. There were negotiations that were taking place between the United States and Iran. There was no reason for this to come to what it's come over the last few days. There was no preemptive attack that took place. This wasn't a preemptive attack. This attack from the Israelis could have been avoided, should have been avoided. And unfortunately, we put ourselves into a spiral here where Israel has declared certain aims that are very difficult to imagine achieving unless one of those aims is actually regime change, and then persistent use of violence in contravention of international law, the UN Charter. This is really quite unprecedented, but unfortunately a fairly, I should say, natural consequence of the culture of impunity that we've seen over the past couple of years in this region.
I'm seeing headlines coming from Israel. Iran fires missile barrage at the north of Israel, and the Israeli Defense Force, Israel's military, targeting Tehran. As you say, a spiral here, a real escalation of what is happening. Is the fact that Israel has in many ways weakened what are called Iran's proxies around the region, basically emboldened Israel to act as it has?
So that's part of it, but I want to bring us back to this issue of impunity. Over the past 20 months, we've seen Israel attack mercilessly, frankly, Gaza. It's an occupied territory. Israel is the occupying power, and it's really pulverized and devastated Gaza. It attacked, invaded, and occupied new parts of Lebanon. And then, of course, with regards to Syria, where it already occupied territory since 1967. It invaded further, occupied more territory, and continues to strike Syria on various occasions. So when you have a state that has done all of these things over the past 20 months, but not face anything in terms of consequences from the international community for its contraventions of international law, all that does is send a very clear signal that if it chooses to do more, then it can, and it can count on the most powerful actors in the international community simply not doing very much. Or worse than that, actually empowering and emboldening. So yes, of the weakening of Hezbollah, of the Houthis, all of that, I think, and of course the downfall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria, I think certainly weakened Iran's geopolitical strength in the region, but I think that it's more than that. You could have had actually all of that happen and avoid this current spiral if it was clear to the Israelis that were they to embark on an action like this, there would be some sort of consequence from Washington, D.C., and we didn't see that.
Indeed, Donald Trump has a sort of plausible deniability in terms of he's able to say, well, Israel's acted without our participation, without
That's
our
not
knowledge.
good enough.
I was about to say that
it
seems that is not good enough, because in many ways the US has enabled Israel all along.
Yeah, so let's have the most charitable reading of this. Okay, the most charitable reading, which by the way I'm somewhat sympathetic to, is that the Israelis decided that they wanted to start striking Iran, that they told Washington that they were going to do so, and that they said that they would go it alone, and they simply wanted to make sure that they had some sort of green light from Washington. I don't think Washington gave them the green light as much as they simply didn't give them a red light. And that's one. Two, that's also not good enough, because in order for Israel to conduct this sort of operation, it counts on the reality that there won't be consequences from Washington. Washington enables Israel's security architecture fundamentally, like it is the main provider of weaponry to the state of Israel, protects it at the United Nations from UN Security Council resolutions and so on. It is definitely a key core factor in any decision-making process when it comes to the Israelis.
What can Iran do now? We've been reporting that they've made an appeal to the Gulf states to ask Trump to put pressure on Netanyahu to stop. Our correspondent in Tehran says that is actually not, as he understands it, from diplomatic sources in Tehran. So there's a question mark over that. But fundamentally, Dr. Hellyer, what can Iran do at this point other than keep fighting?
Well, the Iranians should really be asking themselves, what's happened with their government that seemed to be so invested in things like Hezbollah, backing Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria, and so on, and was unable to protect the population over the last few days. I do think that those are legitimate questions that ordinary Iranians ought to be asking right now. And I'm sure that they are. And that they're caught in this horrible situation that they're not in control of. And I'm not sure what the Iranian regime is likely to do going forward, because really they're stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as I can see. The Israelis at present cannot take out the most fundamental part of the nuclear energy program, because it is deep within a mountain. It cannot be tackled without these big massive bombs from the United States. The Israelis don't have them. They'd need to have American assistance in this regard. So they could protect that program. But at what cost? And how much destruction is likely to take place? I don't know. I think that the Israelis are not operating, and I say this unfortunately, with borrowed time, because the only actor that will stop them from persisting in this course of action will be Washington, D.C., and Washington doesn't seem interested in doing that at present. So I think that the Iranians are frankly stuck between a rock and a hard place on this.
Dr. H.A. Hellyer of the Royal United Services Institute, thank you very much indeed for joining us and giving us your analysis of the situation. Much appreciated. Dr. H.A. Hellyer of the Royal United Services Institute in London. Thank you once again.